everyone, it's Brian here. I really need a better intro for these videos, but today we're going to be going over lesson 8 of our Java track, and this is going to be taking a slight detour from our methods and functions. We're going to be going into arrays and strings. Now, these are really important because arrays are used to store multiple values at once, and strings are just kind of wonky in general, and we just need to make sure that we have the hang of it. Alright, so without further ado, let's just get straight into it. I forgot to do the cursor thing. What exactly are we learning today? Well, first of all, we're going to be learning about what an array is, and then we're going to be learning about how we use them. And secondly, we're going to be going more into strings. Now, Dev did an amazing job at introducing strings in the second episode, so if you do need a basic review of what they are, I highly recommend you go back and check that out. Because today's video is just kind of about string manipulation and different tactics that we can use to dissect and parse strings. Alright. So first of all, what is an array? What exactly are they? Because we know, well, maybe you know, but arrays store values. That's basically it. So an array is a kind of variable that holds more than one value at a time. So arrays can hold multiple values, or some people say that they can hold multiple variables, and that also makes sense. So you could say that an array is a type of variable that holds variables, and that's pretty cool. You're able to change the array as well as receive data from it. So what that means is that you're able to modify the values in the array, and you're also able to receive and take the values in the array. Now, arrays have things called indexes, where each index has a value. Now, indexes always start at 0. Let me repeat that. Indexes always start at 0. The reason why I want to emphasize this so much is that a lot of programmers forget this. So you want to remember that indexes, okay, I'm not even going to repeat it again. You guys get the drill. For example, if you guys have an array called things that has the values car, dog, and plane. So it's a string array that contains 3 strings. Now, this index, if I can get my pointer in here, and this thing in the corner, what is this? If we have a 3 index array, this is index 0, this is index 1, and this is index 2. So the way we want to, or the way we can say this, I guess, is that things of 0, so things index 0 is car, things index 1 is dog, and things index 2 is plane. So if we want to take the value, we'd say things 0, things 1, things 2. Now, if you want to set a value, it's basically the same thing as a normal variable. So you'd say something like things index 0 equals water bottle. Okay, so then that changes the value of things index 0 to the string water bottle. So that's how you would manipulate the array. Here are some things that you can actually do with arrays. First of all, we have array.length that returns the length of our array. So for an example, we have an array called lol, and it's a string array based, it's a string array that contains the values yes and no. So it contains 2 strings. So lol.length would return a value of 2 because there are 2 strings in there. Now, note that this is index 0 and this is index 1. So length returns the count of variables that are in there, but don't be fooled by the indexes. Now, the next section is one that you don't necessarily need to know, but this is a good trick. So if you have 4 type in an array, so let's say, for example, I have a list of integers. So we could say for int x in array, so in the integer array. And that creates a for loop where x ends up looping through the indexes of the array. So I think there's a great example down here. I'm just going to read it really quickly. Yes, if you have a string called cars, this snippet of code for string I colon cars. So we're taking I, and I becomes the value of each index of cars, and we're printing out the value. So this would print out everything in the array cars. That's a pretty cool trick. You don't have to know it, but that is a good way to have a for loop through an array. Oh goodness. That's a good way to have a for loop in an array, but there are other ways to do it. This is just a little bit easier to type out. So now let's get into strings. What exactly do we do with these things? Well, here is a long list of methods that you can use with the string. So string.length returns the length of the string, which I'm pretty sure Dev mentions in episode 2. So you should kind of check that out. String.toCharArray actually turns the string into a character array. So it takes each character of the string and puts it into an array. Okay, pretty cool. Now, the third bullet point is a little bit confusing. String x equals new string char array. And this turns a character array, which is previously made, into a string. String.char at position x returns a character at the string index x. So, if, for example, if I had a character array that spelled out hello world, so, index 0 would be H, then ELLO, space, WORLD, exclamation point. So if I said string.char at 0, that would give me the letter H, because that is the character that is at string index 0. Alright, now this fifth bullet point is interesting, because we are not able to compare strings the way we compare integers or characters in normal if statements. We can't just say, we can't just use the double equal sign. So the way we compare strings is we say, if string 1 dot equals string 2. And this tells us if the string is equal. Yeah. String.split rejects, or I don't even know how to pronounce it. String.split that word splits the string into an array by that word. So I'm not 100% sure on how to explain this properly, so I just decided to put an example in here. If we have a string called Bob that has the value H space I, and then I said Bob.split spacebar, that would split the string into a string array with two indexes, one saying H and one saying I. So if I had the string hello world from our previous example, and I said split by the spacebar, so let's call our string lol, and we say lol.split spacebar, then we'll have hello space world, right? And that'll end up splitting into a string array with two indexes, one saying hello and one saying world, because it splits by the spacebar. Alright, that's very cool. So now, let's start coding. And I know we didn't really go over that many slides, and that's because I think it's much better to do this with example. So, Coding Brian, you're up. Hey everyone, Coding Brian here. I think, I'm not actually sure what we're doing today, so I'm gonna just check my notes really quickly. I think slides, Brian, explain this. Okay, we're doing arrays and strings. So, I think I'm going to focus more on arrays for now, because we already did strings. Those are like so old. There's like 2017 stuff. So I have Eclipse open here, and I have the main method, which is what we learned last episode. So let's do some arrays here. Let's say I had an integer array. So this is how we would initialize it. Int brackets water. We're going to call our array water because water is cool. Integer array called water equals, let's say we wanted to put the values 5, 7, 9 in here. Now, what we just did is we used these weird curly bracket things to make an array, which then has 3 values in it, 5, 7, and 9. And their indexes go from 0 to 2. I'm pretty sure Slides Brian, or I rather hope that Slides Brian emphasized the fact that you should start indexes with 0. So 3 integers, but the indexes go from 0 to 2. Now, if I wanted to create an integer array that wasn't initialized yet, what I would do is I would make a new integer array with the brackets, and let's say we wanted it to have 10 indexes. There you go. So now we have a blank index with 10 integers, and each of their indexes range from 0 to 9. Alright, well that's pretty cool. So if we have an integer array like this, a good way to test our knowledge is to say, alright, what if we wanted to set all of these integer values to 0? Well, let's use a for loop. And we're not going to be using the one that Slides Brian put in his slides. Those are really weird, man. I don't even know what he did there. So we're just going to have for int I equals 0, I is less than water.length, I plus plus. So now my question to you guys is, how much is this looping? And I'll give you the answer right now. It's looping from 0 to 9. Now, the reason why is because we're saying int I equals 0. I is less than water.length. Well, let's ask ourselves, what is water.length? Well, it's 10, because that's what we defined it to be. So int I equals 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus. So we're going from 0 to 9 and then stopping at 10. So notice how if we loop from 0 to 9 and we say, for example, water of I equals 0, well, now we're setting water index 0 to 0, then it loops, and we're setting water index 1 to 0, setting water index 2 to 0, and etc., etc. So we're manipulating the array, and we're changing all the values to 0. All right, that's pretty good. Now, what if we wanted to grab that data and print it out? So let's say for int I equals 0. I'm going to make a second for loop here, which has the same looping property, so it goes from 0 to 9. And let's say we want to get, the integer that's in there. So let's say int integer, and that's going to be equal to water of I. So in this case, we've already set all the values to 0, so it'll just give me 0 every single time, because it'll say int integer equals water 0. That becomes equal to 0. Then it loops again and says int integer equals water 1, which is still 0, and it keeps going. So then what we can do is we can print out integer. All right, there we go. Now, if I were to do this and run the code, it should print out. That should be 10 zeros. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. 10 zeros, indexes 0 to 9. Now, I have a test question for you guys. Is there a way that we can actually reduce these two lines to one line? Because we can do this in one line if our only goal was to print out the index value. So I'll give you a minute to solve that. All right, your minute's over. So here we're going to actually change this to system.out.println water I, because that still works. We're just replacing integer with water I, and they both have the same value. So if I run this again, it'll still print out the exact same thing. Very cool. So now, before we move into strings, here's a little quiz question that I'm actually not going to answer in this video. Let's say we have an integer, or rather an integer array, and it can be like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So using a for loop, would we be able to take the sum of all, like using So now I have a little quiz for you guys. If I were to have an integer array like this here, how would you be able to print out the sum of all of these numbers using a for loop? Good luck with that. So now we're going to be moving into strings, and here I'll just be demonstrating some of the string properties, and I promise I will not give you a second weird question that you need to do. So let's say we have a string. We're going to call it name, and it's going to be equal to Brian, because, my name is obviously the best. So here are some things that we can do with strings. Let's say we have a string array called name. Let's call it split. And it's going to be equal to name.split by the letter R. Okay. So now, let's take a moment to think about what would be in this string array. Well, I think Slides Brian pointed out that if we split by a certain string, then it splits the array accordingly. So what would happen is we'd have one array with two indexes, one with the letter B and one with the letter, or rather the phrase, yan. The R would be gone. So that would be our array. So the way we can figure out if we're right is we just do for int I equals 0, I is less than split.length, I plus plus, and system.out.println split I. So again, we're going through the array and we're printing out the result. So if I run this, there we go. So I have two indexes, B and yan. All right, that's pretty cool. So now I want to go over how we can compare strings. And after this, I promise that I will be done with this section. I know this is a little bit boring, but let's do this. Let's say we have string owner equals Ria, because Ria is, the person who's heading all this. She's really awesome. And yeah. All right. So if we wanted to compare these two strings, we would say if name dot equals, Eclipse just corrected me there, equals owner. All right. So that's how we compare two strings. Now, this is compared to how we would compare to integers. So like integer Bob equals 5, integer mob equals 6, and then we say if Bob equals mob, then do this. So strings are a little bit different because we can't just use the relational operator sign. So here we're going to be doing a string comparison. And we'll say system.out line super cool. And then let's make an else statement. And let's do system.out.println not super cool. And a sad face because I like emojis. So if we run this, it'll say not super cool because Brian is clearly not equal to Rhea. Now, if I were to change it so that Rhea was the value of name, and we ran this, it would say super cool because they're equal. Now, here's a little bonus case that Slides Brian forgot to mention because I guess he just forgot or something. If I were to actually make this lowercase, and I were to run this, what do you think would happen? Well, if I were to run it, it would say not super cool. And that's kind of sad, you know, because we can't really do capitalization. So now there's actually a way around this. If I change equals to equals ignore case, what this does is it ignores the caps of the sentence, or the string, I should say. So it ignores the capitalization, and it compares them. So if I ran this again, it would say super cool, because Rhea is Rhea. One is lowercase, one is uppercase, but they are both the same. So equals compares the strings directly, while equals ignore case compares them regardless of case. So with that being said, I guess, where is Slides Brian? I don't even think he's here. So I guess I'm going to conclude this video for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope that you guys learned something, and I also hope that you guys try the problem out. So I guess with that being said, that's about it. Next week we're going to be getting into arrays. Wait, what am I saying? We did that this week. Next week we're going to be going into classes and objects, and that's where things will get a lot more complicated. So buckle up, because we have a lot to do. So I'll see you later. I hope you have a great day, and that's about it for me. All right, see ya. You know, Slides Brian, it would be really appreciated if next time you actually come and conclude this video.